how to write literature reviews. Now today I'll be talking about the exact method I use for the past 7, 8, 9, I'm getting old, for nearly a decade in terms of this process I've used to write literature reviews. Now I'm not going to be talking about systematic analyses and actual procedure. I'm talking about the overview, the kind of method I actually use to approach and attack any literature review, whether it's part of a paper, whether it's in a thesis or a dissertation of any sort. This is a 3-step method that I use, so let's get into it. So the first one is actually what I call the upside down triangle. But before I talk about it, I just want to ask, have you noticed the plants growing? Like any of them? If you've been a viewer for the channel for a long time, you've seen these plants behind me. And I'm just curious, because I am curious. If you notice the plants have been growing, or they've got bigger in whatever shape, just comment down below. I'm just interested to see over this channel. It's been like a couple of years now. Have you seen the growth? But anyway, back to the video at hand, which is why you clicked, hopefully. This upside down triangle, what I mean by this is that when you approach searching for papers that are going to be part of your review, the first phase, the first few paragraphs are going to be kind of the surface level. So for example, let's say you're looking at a very subset within cancer biology. The first bit is actually going to be about cancer in general, maybe a few lines, maybe a few stats about cancer, maybe a few simple understandings, the famous hallmarks of cancer. I forgot the name now. I used to know this off by heart. It's in my thesis. Anyway, you know it. I'll put up here, power of editing, and that gives you an overview where you're starting off vague, then you're getting more specialized, then you're getting more niche, and then by the end of the introduction to your literature review, you now found that gap in the knowledge, of which the rest of the paper is now talking about that gap. Because generally a consensus within a literature review is that you're kind of comparing and contrasting, which is similar to the next point, about certain papers, certain research, certain studies, and then you're sharing your own kind of 2 cents on that topic. So this upside down triangle is a great first step when you're looking at a review. Make a flowchart of, okay, what's the top level triangle? You look at a base. I'll try to put a graphic here. Vague, niche, even more subset, even more niche, and then the gap that you're looking at, which then sets the tone for the rest of the review. Which brings me on to the second point, compare and contrast. Compare and contrast is the second part of this 3-step framework, and essentially it's just something I remind myself of doing when I am writing a literature review. You're comparing similar papers, and then you're contrasting that subset to another cohort of papers. So for example, any research you're doing in any format, you will have arguments within studies, clinical trials, or just like the top professors in the area having similar thoughts on a certain topic. But then you'll have certain people who oppose that or have different views. There are your comparing and contrasting points. So what I used to, within that flowchart I mentioned about the upside down triangle, once you start talking about your niche, you'll go back into the literature and the studies, and just literally put similar papers together in the folder or notes and put contrasting papers. And then for each of the points that you're thinking of within your literature review, you're looking at certain signaling pathway or certain modes or methods of doing something, whatever it is, whether it's outside of STEM, whatever it is, you just make points that you're going to compare and contrast. And if you know that in advance, then you know what you're looking for. You can spend the whole day just finding similar papers on a particular receptor or certain method or certain viewpoint. And then you can look at the contrasting points. And that's how you can nice, in a methodical manner, break down your literature. And now lastly, probably the biggest method, biggest hack, biggest tip within this kind of framework and viewpoint is the reviewer lens. What I mean by this is that whenever I'm approaching anything, especially a literary review, I'm constantly thinking about what the reviewer will look at it, how the reviewer will see this, how the reviewer will look at this point, how the reviewer will deem this figure or paragraph, how the reviewer will look at the flow. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to ultimately dictate how successful this paper might be. Once it goes on into public domain, then you're looking at citations. But to get to that point, it's up to the reviewer. So if you're thinking about what questions they may ask, you can answer them in the next paragraph or later on in the paper, right? I remember the Big Bang Theory when I used to watch, I think Sheldon was looking at a paper. I'll see if I can find it, I'll put it up here. And he was like, why? And then he turned over the page and it said, oh.
Why? Why? Oh, that's why.
And that's actually a really good way to look at papers where you're drop feeding rhetorical questions that the reviewer might be thinking of, and then when that OO comes in, the next paragraph you answer. That's a really good way, a really important way for you to visualize and look like binoculars, look at your literary review, because then you're minimizing the kind of feedback and points that you'll have to answer after you submit it and you get feedback, right? So have a think about, once you even finish writing it, go back and pretend you're a reviewer. Why did you do this? How? What did you miss here? Why did you ask this? Obviously ask people and your colleagues to look at it, because then you're going to have a more polished paper because you thought about where it's going. Same thing applies when you're writing a thesis. I've got many videos linked in the video description about writing a thesis where you're looking at the reviewer in mind for your examiner. You're thinking about the examiner in mind, that why and how strategy I use. The same applies here. So guys, that was a little bit of a quick snapshot into the method I use to write a literary review. I hope you are maybe writing one, and I hope this video helps. If it does, do consider liking and help out the video and the channel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, feel free. It is free, I think. I'm pretty sure it is. Should be down here. That'd be a massive help to me and the channel. And stay tuned for new videos. You see nurses react, doctors react, pharmacists react, famous YouTubers react. Now you're going to see scientists / researcher reacts to any claims and myths. So stay tuned for that. Something coming out over the next coming weeks. A new kind of series that I want to try out. See if you guys like it, if you guys enjoy it. Hopefully you do. But the super informative videos will remain. On that note, see you later.